To remain updated with the latest business news, click on the bell icon.
Hello and welcome to Business Today TV. I'm Siddharth Zarabi and with me today is Sanjiv Mehta, the Chairman and Managing Director of Hindustan Unilever Limited. He's taken over recently as the President of Industry Chamber, the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry. Welcome to BT, Sanjiv, and many congratulations for taking over at the helm of FICCI. Let me begin by asking you about the ongoing economic revival and the state of the economy as you see it.
Yeah, thank you, Siddharth, and thank you for your greetings and my greetings to all your viewers. As far as the economy is concerned, it is on the stage of recovery. And sitting here this time of the year, if we were to compare the situation at the same time last year, things are significantly better. Last year, we had a negative growth, and this year, with all the estimates indicating that we might end with in the vicinity of 9.5% growth rate, which would imply that all the GDP we lost last year, we would have more or less recovered. That is one good thing. Then if you look at the constituents of economy and what's taking place, if you look at the revenue collection for the last 7 months, ending October, they have been upwards of 30%, not when compared to 2020 when the economy declined, but with reference to 19. That is also a wonderful thing to happen. The second thing is exports. Exports are looking like they will hit the stretching goal of $400 billion this year. This also augurs well because there was a time when exports had languished in the vicinity of $310-20 billion. So this has been a remarkable growth this year. The third is when you look at it from a lens of FDI, I think it's been a great year for the business, for the country. And even though a large chunk of the FDI has come into the tech space, but so be it, because foreign capital which has come in, and often it comes in with technology. So there are many factors which stand out and which augur well for the country.
You spoke about several elements in those first remarks, and let's take them up one by one. Let's begin with the point about inflows. Capital inflows have been robust, and you spoke about the private equity space, the VC space, leading to a tech evolution. The new stars of Indian industry are being minted, as we say, and this time by venture funding. Sanjeev, do the valuations seem to be a concern? Because a lot of the times people say, where are the profits? Or what is this business model? Yet you have these billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar valuations.
Yeah, sure. I would let the market decide the valuation. But what I tell the startup entrepreneurs, many of whom I mentor, is focus on creating value, and valuation will happen. I don't think young entrepreneurs should be very focused just on the valuation bit or get carried away by that. Important bit is if you keep creating value, valuation is bound to happen. And what one has to look at, what I call as the sweet spot of innovation, which is when you have a product or service which meets the unmet needs of the consumers. The second is when you build capabilities which are distinctive and hard to replicate. And the third is you've created a business model where you appropriate a large part of the value chain. If this troika, you are able to get it in grip, then value will happen, you will create value, and creating value will lead to valuation.
The bit about growth that you spoke, and this is significant, you spoke about 9.5%. Where do you think this growth is likely to stabilize, given that there are now fears around Omicron? We have seen the stock markets react. From your point of view, as a captain of industry, how do you see the Omicron impact playing out?
Yeah, right. Thank you for that question, Siddharth. Omicron is a risk, and we should not let guard down in any which way. We should practice the right habits, which many of us have inculcated. Some have given it up, but we should get back to it, whether it is wearing a mask or keeping distance or using soaps and sanitizers several times a day. Those are the things which have to be done. But we must appreciate that this time of the year, compared to the same time last year, we are in a very different position. I think the most remarkable thing has been the 1.3 billion doses of vaccine which have been administered. Just imagine, for a large country like ours, over half the eligible population has already been vaccinated. And at the speed at which we are going and the production of vaccine, in another 3-4 months, we would have the entire eligible population vaccinated, which would be a tremendous feat, absolutely tremendous feat, which we as a country should be very proud of what we have achieved. The second is our health infrastructure. It's in far better shape than, say, at the beginning of the pandemic. Beginning of the pandemic, we had issues of ICU beds, we had issues of ventilators. Last year, we had issues. We had to transport oxygen from the east of the country to west and north. Now, to a large extent, we have created additional capacity of oxygen. Many of the hospitals have got their own units for oxygen. So we are, from the health infrastructure side, also in a much better position. That augurs well. And while it is very difficult to predict what would be the impact of this new variant on our country, but if we have to, look at some evidence, it seems it spreads rapidly, but the impact on people has not been very brutal. So that should, again, for a large population which has been vaccinated, should augur well.
Sanjeev, while we will leave the decision on a booster dose to the experts and to the scientists, from an industry point of view, would you call for a booster dose for factory workers, for the entire services sector? Because that is where the first and most significant impact of any lockdown comes.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right, Siddharth. There are, in fact, two areas. One is vaccine for the children, and the second is the booster dose. But this is linked to several issues, right? This is where science has to come in.
Yep.
Is how long does the impact of the vaccine remain, and whether many of our vaccines are vector based, whether, as well, on the other hand, there is a school of thinking that you need mRNA as a booster. And I think we should let science prevail and let the government come out with what is the best thing to be done in the interest of the nation. But if your question is that if there is a need to protect the frontline workers, then should we go about protecting them with speed? The answer will, of course, be yes.
Okay. In terms of the industry preparedness to combat any possible third wave, what would you tell our viewers? What is the situation as far as vaccinations are concerned on the shop floor, across corporate offices, in the IT sector, across industry? Can we say that industrial India is perhaps 100% vaccinated?
I would not be able to say with a high degree of confidence whether industrial India is fully vaccinated. But I can definitely say a business like the company that I lead is nearly all people are vaccinated. Some because they may not be eligible or may have a reason why they don't want to take vaccination. But otherwise, everyone has been vaccinated. And I would believe that this should be the norm for most of corporate India. As far as your question, Siddharth, is concerned with preparedness, FICCI did a lot of work during the second wave of laying down the guidelines which should be followed by administration as well as the corporations on how to deal with the second wave. And one also has to accept that most of the companies would have developed new muscles on how to navigate were a third wave to come in.
Sanjeev, one of the other issues, and you spoke about better health infrastructure, and from that I want you to tell us, if you can at this stage, what would your own thoughts be with regard to spending on health from the central budget? We are just a few weeks away from the next union budget. What kind of priorities as far as health spending is concerned should be expressed by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman?
Yeah. Health, we have to take a long-term view. And I believe that we can become the affordable healthcare capital of the world. And there is, within the bigger healthcare, there is the pharma industry, which has about $40 billion of revenue, and which could very easily, in the next few years, be scaled up to $100 billion. This would require us to build capacity for manufacturing APIs in the country, and also, very importantly, doing much more research and development that we have ever done in the past. But this is something which falls in the area of biotech, which definitely as a country we need to pursue. And as far as the healthcare is concerned, is at the end of the day, is your healthy population has so much of impact on productivity, so much of impact it has on healthcare expenditure in the normal way, and that is so important to improve the quality of life of our citizens, that the government should definitely look at a long-term strategy which should be based on improving the quantum of spends as a percentage of GDP that we do on healthcare. And there are many areas, for instance, health tourism. We could again become the leading place for the world. And we have great doctors, we have great hospitals, but we need many more great hospitals. And we need to create an environment where the medical tourists, they feel welcome, they are brought in, they are given great service, they become ambassadors, and that's how it starts.
Absolutely. Sanjeev, let's come back to discussing the economy, and you are pretty much the best expert on consumer trends, consumer behavior, as well as prices that we are seeing. Post the pandemic, there are several things that are changing as far as the economy is concerned, and you represent organized industry. My first question, what kind of situation do you see panning out as far as consumer prices and the inflation rate is concerned? Anecdotally, as well as the data, point towards prices going up, and industry across the board is raising prices. That becomes a consumer issue at some point of time. What are your thoughts?
You're right, Siddharth. Inflation is a reality. In the business in which I lead, commodities like palm oil, commodities or crude-based derivatives, or even tea, the inflation has been unprecedented. And while every company would look at tightening the belt, would look at optimizing all the lines of P&L, but they would be left with no option but to take price increase. So price increase in many sectors is going to be a reality.
Sanjeev, is the price...
But when question that you may all... go ahead, Siddharth.
No, please complete your point.
No, the question I thought, Siddharth, you may have is, how long the commodity cycle will continue. I don't think the commodity cycle is based on high rate of demand. It has been driven more by supply side than by demand side. And there would be an element of also speculation into it. And I believe as commodity manufacturers or commodity players start debottlenecking their supply chain, by the second half of 22, we should start seeing some softening of commodity prices.
Okay, and is that likely to pass on and mean lower prices at the consumer level?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. It's a very competitive world, and every brand has a certain ability to carry a price premium. And if you are in a scenario where the commodity prices start deflating or start coming down, I'm sure there would be price correction downwards.
Okay. You spoke about speculation, and you must have noticed the fact that the government has banned futures with respect to a certain select list of items. And there has been criticism of that move, that the government is intervening in the markets with an eye on controlling prices. What's your own take as the FICCI president on such moves?
We have to look at what is the primary role of the government. They have to look after the welfare of the people. And in a country like India, where the average income is just about $2,000 per capita, and that is also highly skewed, we have a large section of the population which is living on very meager income. So the government has to look after their interests. And if the government looks at there is a risk of inflation going up further, or someone trying to make hay when it is not warranted, then a level of government intervention, I believe, would be the right thing to be done.
Okay. Sanjeev, this is also a government who has come up with a major semiconductor manufacturing initiative in terms of a policy that's been announced. And as we see it getting implemented, it should ultimately, in a few years from now, address one very critical shortage, which is resulting in Indian consumers having long waiting times for various products, including primarily automobiles. How do you see the semiconductor policy? Is it a step, even if it's come a few decades late than it should have?
Yeah. Siddharth, the way I look at it is there are some categories or industries in a country where you have got a natural advantage. And there would be some categories or industries which are very critical for the country where you have to create a natural an advantage, a competitive advantage. Whether it is the PLI scheme, which enables you to get scale and then reduce your cost, or the government semiconductor policy, I think it's in the right direction. Because scale also allows you to bring down cost, very importantly. And it will be a short supply if there is more of domestic production. So India will have to compete on cost, on quality, on service, but also very importantly, R&D and innovations. And that is a subject which is also very dear to my heart, that how do we in a country up the game when it comes to R&D and innovations?
Explain to our viewers, Sanjeev, your own reading of the fintech revolution. Look at the volume of payments, look at the number of companies who are trying to do various innovative things, and it's all built on a core where there is a far decent bandwidth network than used to be the case 10, 15, 20 years ago. Where is fintech headed in terms of the future?
Oh, absolutely. That's a very good question. And really, this boils down to Siddharth. The three areas where I believe India needs to really up the game on innovations and R&D is one is the area of biotech, which is a confluence of biology and technology. The second is in green tech, where India, we have got growth aspirations, but we have to manage that by reducing environment footprints. So this whole area of solar, hydrogen, carbon capture, carbon storage, those are the areas which are going to be big play in the future. And we have to be leading edge in it. And the third one is, of course, digitech. And fintech is part of it. And thanks to the infrastructure that has been laid down, and I believe with the advent of 5G, this will become even more powerful. And we have now got the infrastructure where we should bring in a technology prowess not just in fintech, but in areas like healthcare, in education, in across the value chain of businesses. And that would make such a big difference to the country. You know, when we got our independence, or really the first and the second industrial revolution happened before we got our independence, and we had missed the bus. When the third industrial revolution happened, we were still a very poor country. We were just coming out of the control regime era. But this is an opportunity for us where Industry 4.0, we can really maximize the gains that would be coming from this revolution, and it could help us leapfrog. But the important bit to understand here, whether it is fintech or it is any other digitech, is that we should have the public R&D, the academia, the corporations, the private corporations and the startups come together and collaborate if we have to make a difference. Yeah, whether you look at MIT Media Lab, which was basically set up by academia and private corporations, or the park in Taiwan, where they made such a big difference with semiconductors. That's the kind of thing we will have to do to up the game.
My final question, Sanjiv, and there's so much to discuss, but I just want your comments on the Bitcoin regulation. We've seen a bit of a back and forth between the RBI and the policy makers. And in the interim since 2019, hundreds and thousands of youth have entered and are investing in cryptocurrencies without a regulatory framework, without any KYC. What would you tell the RBI and the government as far as a policy and regulation on this front is concerned?
You know, this is again an area where a lot of people don't have a deep understanding of the subject. And I think this is a time where the government and the Reserve Bank have to step in the interest of the population at large, and not for just a select group of people. And I would again I'm pleased that the government and the Reserve Bank are cognizant of the issue, and they should hopefully come out with a very clear point of view of what would be in the interest of the public at large.
Absolutely, Sanjiv, and I think that's going to be a very critical decision as far as looking at the innovation and capabilities of blockchain versus some other aspects of the entire crypto boom that we have seen. Sanjiv Mehta, thank you very much for your time with us here today. There's so much more to discuss, but we'll do that some other time. All the very best for your stint leading industry chamber, FICCI. Thank you very much for your time with us today.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.